Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have or good morning for some of you in California. We hope that you are safe from the fires, and we wish you all well. At this moment, the fires seem to be relatively contained for us Californians, and therefore we're in better shape than we thought we were going to be a week ago. We have a very special treat this morning, which is that I'm interviewing Neil Keller. Neil Keller is, and I'm interviewing him about a survivor who just passed away 1 week shy of her 104th birthday. Now, we understand that all the survivors who are now leaving us and leaving us too rapidly are essentially elderly men and women, but Agnes was enormously special because she was a very great athlete. And Neil's ability to speak about this comes from a very basic thing, which is that Neil is one of the great collectors of memorabilia from athletes, and who were involved and whose careers very often were sidetracked by the Holocaust. So we're going to speak with him about Agnes. And Neil, I understand that you had the very great privilege of meeting Agnes and of knowing about her. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about her.
Well, I've been collecting memorabilia of famous Jewish people and researching who is Jewish since 1986. Jews in baseball, basketball, entertainment, politics, the Holocaust, Nobel Prize winners. And so in the early 90s through 97, I was helping the International Jewish Sports Hall of Fame in Netanya. They wanted me to help them with research on Jewish athletes who perished during the Holocaust. And I also researched Jewish athletes who survived the Holocaust. And believe it or not, Agnes, besides being a great gymnast, who I can tell you a lot more about her, she was working at the Wingate Institute in Netanya. So I got in touch with her and we wrote letters. And
tell us for a moment about what the Wingate Institute is, because General Wingate was a very special person in Free State Israel,
right,
which was then called Palestine. And the Wingate Institute was a very special institute in Israel named in his honor.
Right. His first name was David Wingate, and he wasn't Jewish, but he was in, I think, the British military. And the Wingate Institute is where like Israeli Olympic athletes and other athletes train. It's in Netanya, and it's kind of like the United States has like Colorado Springs is where a lot of our Olympic athletes train. And we also had the International Jewish Sports Hall of Fame Museum there. So I was working with some Alan Sherman and Joe Sigmund years ago. And I never imagined 30 years later, I'd be speaking around the country on this topic. But Agnes is in my PowerPoint presentation.
So tell us about Agnes, because if I understand correctly, you'll tell us about her Holocaust experience, but she became an Olympic athlete after the Holocaust.
Correct. Okay, so Agnes was born January 9th, 1921, and she passed away January 2nd, 2025. And they were already planning a family get-together for her 104th birthday, but she passed away from heart failure. The family was born Agnes Klein. But then when anti-Semitism was growing in Hungary, she was from Budapest. The family changed her name to Keleti. For a while, I called her Keleti, but she corrected me on that. So it's Agnes Keleti. And she was really into gymnastics. Before the Nazis invaded in 1944, she played the cello, she was a swimmer, and she loved gymnastics. At the 1940 Hungarian Championships, Agnes was the country's champion. And then
in what event?
floor exercises, and the uneven parallel bar. Those were her two specialties. Then the Nazis invaded March 19th, 1944. I don't know, I've known this for so many years, I have it all memorized. So Agnes was really ahead of her time. She was talking to her gymnastics friend, and they created a fake marriage. His name, I wrote it down somewhere. No, his name was Astvan Skarkani. And she knew that if she married him, she would be safer. And it kept her out of a labor camp. So she married him. Meanwhile, her father was murdered in the Holocaust, as were many relatives. And Agnes, this is an amazing story. Agnes survived the war by purchasing a Christian ID paper, and she posed as a Christian girl. And she pretty much was able to do this, and she was a maid and doing other jobs while the Nazis occupied Hungary. Her sister and mother were rescued by Swedish diplomat Raoul Wallenberg. Of course, you know who Raoul Wallenberg is. He rescued thousands of Jewish people from Europe. And so Agnes,
Well, let me just add, he provided what were called safe passes, Schutzpasses, to Jews in Budapest, and he's responsible for saving tens of thousands of Jews who had this. He was assisted by a man posing as a Spanish diplomat, and he was assisted by the consul general or somebody in the consul general of Switzerland. So this is one of the great heroic stories of diplomats who rescued Jews. But let's continue with Agnes's story.
but one more thing with Raoul. So you know me, I research everyone, find out if they're Jewish or not. So Raoul was not Jewish, but well, he was 1/16 Jewish from my research, but he didn't consider himself Jewish. But to me, he's a righteous Gentile. So then Agnes, remember, there were no Olympics in 1940 and 44. Agnes was born in 1921. So she missed prime years of her greatness. You know, nowadays, like Ali Reisman and Simone Biles, they're like stars at 16 years old. So Agnes, remember, she missed, there were no Olympics. The last Olympics were in 36, and in all places, Nazi Germany. So in 48, she was considered one of the best in the world. But Agnes tore a ligament in her ankle and did not participate. So she missed 3 Olympics because she would probably be the all-time winningest Olympic medalist ever if she didn't miss those years. But in 49 at the World University Games, she won 4 golds, 1 silver, and 1 bronze medal. And then Agnes was a big time person at the 52 Olympics. Those were held in Helsinki, Finland, and at the 56 Olympics in Melbourne, Australia. Agnes won 10 medals. She won 5 golds, 3 silvers, and I think it was 2 bronze. And like she was an amazing athlete. And if you look at what
She was in her late 20s at that point.
later in 56, she was 35 years old. She was born in 1921. So in 1956, she was 35, and in the 52 Olympics, she was 31.
And you think of women gymnasts as thin girls, meaning almost prepubescent, because of the nature of the strain that it puts on the body and all that's required to succeed in gymnastics. And here she is as a mature woman.
Hey, I mean, I have all these things I'm going to show you from her, but this is not the rarest. These are from 2021. Can you see it?
Yeah.
That's a French magazine. They were honoring her for her 100th birthday, and there she is doing a gymnastics pose at 100. She was, and I have three of these. That means the team in French. And I love that picture. I'm not sure. I think that's her son, Raphael, on the cover, but it might be her trainer. So at 100, she was still doing gymnastics. But like she never ceased to amaze me. She had a positive attitude, even though her father and many of her relatives were murdered by the Nazis. So Agnes won 10 medals, but in reality, no one talks about this. The Hungarian team won a team medal in 52. So if you count that towards her, she has 11. Do you know which two Jewish athletes have more Olympic medals than her?
No, Mark
Mark,
Spitz.
yeah, Mark Spitz. He lives in LA. Mark Spitz has 11. And also in California is Dara Torres. Dara Torres is a great swimmer. She had a Jewish father. And then when Dara got married to a Jewish guy, she converted herself. So Dara has 12 medals. But like, I don't know. I think Michael Phelps has like 17. Agnes probably would have more. And it breaks my heart when I give speeches and no one's ever heard of her. And she was like a very inspirational person. I enjoyed, our letters, and she's a very friendly. She had a great attitude. Her sons Raphael and Daniel are very lucky that she was their mother.
So
So
tell us a little bit about, you met with Agnes,
actually, it was more just letters.
letters. Tell us about your relationship with her.
She was intrigued by my hobby of being, you have to have chutzpah. Sometimes I ask people if they're Jewish and stuff. And I told her that I was working for the International Jewish Sports Hall of Fame. And she said to me, "Oh, I do work there." She was a gymnastics teacher after the war and after the Olympics. And like, Jews love talking about who is Jewish. I don't want to go off track, but what's his name? Rod Carew wrote me back a letter, the baseball player, saying, "Neil, I never converted." So I took, and I have it on Rod Carew letterhead. And I sent that letter to Adam Sandler, and his publicist called me and he says, "We have to change the Hanukkah song." Because there's so many false rumors out there of who was Jewish. But Agnes was a proud Jewish lady.
And she lived in Israel, or her kids lived in Israel?
Well, she was living in Budapest most of her life. I think when she lived in Israel for like 10 years. I don't know if Raphael, her son, is um, on this Zoom, but she did go back, I think at the age of 96, back to Budapest. And she was a lovely woman. If you want, I can show you some items from her.
Sure, please.
Oh, but before we do that, so after the 56 Olympics, that was when the Soviet Union invaded Hungary. So Agnes did not return there. And Agnes was like a celebrity. So Agnes stayed in Australia where the Olympics were held. She got married to a guy named Robert Biro, Biro. And then when the Russians left, she went back to Hungary. And then she had sons, Raphael and Daniel. And she was a gymnastics teacher later when she moved to Israel for, that's it. I think she probably lived in Israel for 35 years. I mean, she lived 104 years, which is unbelievable and
Tell
stuff.
us about your correspondence with her.
Okay, well, let me see. I have so many things. Let me see some fun things I have. Let me see. This is that. So the first time I wrote to her, I asked her to send me an autograph. So wait, can you see that?
Yes, we can.
And I get annoyed. Like I hate when Europeans write their autograph on the back. She signed it, Olympic winner Keleti Agnes. And I had to explain to her, no, you write your first name first. But a lot of Europeans, it's like you signing something, Berenbaum Michael. So she sent me the same picture back, Agnes Keleti. So that's her on her specialty. Uneven bars and floor exercises were her specialty. So those are two autographs. She loves sending me things. That one, she's on the uneven bars. And on the back, she wrote down her results for me. Then here she is getting the gold medal. And I'm not smearing their autographs. That's Agnes. Remember, her last name was really Klein. And this is an unusual picture. I'm not sure I said, do you have any pictures non-gymnastics? So that's her there. Oh, I have two of these. Maybe it's because, let me see. Yep. She first sent me this picture, Keleti Agnes, and said, can you send it to me again? It's like the time Yitzhak Shamir, the prime minister of Israel, sent me an autograph photo, and he signed it in Hebrew. So I wrote to the embassy. I said, can he do it in English? And he did. What else do I have? I have Agnes. That's her on, that's probably her, the four exercises. But I'm sure she did the balance beam too. Here's Agnes once again. I love this one. She she included all her results. Everything you want to know about Agnes, but you're afraid to ask, is on this card. And she signed it. She signed a piece of paper for me. And like, here's a rare 1952 Olympic card. And it's written, let me see, I have to put my glasses on. I think that's French. This is when in Helsinki. I have a lot of items from the Holocaust. They're all, of course, from Europe. And there she is on the floor with her Hungarian team. Here's a 1973 Katav card. Katav was a publishing company that produced a lot of Judaica books out of Brooklyn. And that's a card from her. I have a few more things. I wrote an article about her that went on, I think it went on the JTA. I wrote, who is Agnes Keleti? Because people would come up to me and say, I never heard of her. But she has 10 medals. And she would have had a lot more if it went for World War II and her injury. And so, and of course, I have these I showed you. These are the magazines of her doing that gymnastics pose at the age of 100. At the bottom, I think it means a living hero, Agnes Keleti.
Yes.
So, I mean, she was a remarkable woman. And I was sad to hear, very sad to hear that she passed away, but you know, she lived almost 104, which I find amazing.
Now, she passed away in Hungary. Did Hungary honor her in her passing?
I think so. It was just a week ago. I can't remember. Raphael, I actually asked him if he would mail me one of the funeral programs. I know it sounds kind of morbid, but I would include it in the collection.
No, it's not. It's certainly not morbid because if any of us are privileged to live to 103 and what 11 months, what we would find is that our death would not be mourned so much. Our funeral would not be a time of mourning, is more a celebration of a
Life.
life, of a long life and a life well lived. Did she ever reflect on the fact that she had survived the Holocaust and that she had experienced the death of so many who were close to her?
Yes, but I felt that she didn't want to talk about it too much. It's kind of like when I was talking to Harry Haft. They did a movie on Harry Haft, The Survivor by Barry Levinson on HBO. And Harry, well, he died in 2006. A lot of them are pretty much like, I don't know if it's PTSD, but they don't like to talk about it that much. But you know, she was a proud woman. Another proud woman that lived to 103 was Margaret Lambert. She was a high jumper that owned the world record in the world for the high jump. But Hitler only let one Jewish athlete on the Summer Olympics, Helene Mayer. And Helene had a promise that she'll do the Nazi salute if she won a medal. But so they kicked her off the team, and Margaret moved to the United States and won many championships. And she passed away at 102 or 103 in Jamaica States, New York. And she told me that was my best way to get back at them, by living long. And that's
Well,
what I did.
life is the best. Life is the best revenge.
Yes.
Survivors would very often say at weddings, he's lying in the grave, or Erlicht in Dreard. He's lying in, I don't want to say in this thing what Dreard means, and I'm dancing at a wedding. So living well is the best revenge. But part of it is life itself becomes extra precious when you've experienced that type of death and destruction. Let's remind our participants that 36 Olympics was held in Berlin, and it was a showcase for the new Germany, for the Renaissance, the rebirth of Germany. And you also had a very interesting American experience. You know about the story of Marty Glickman and Sam Stoller.
Yes, of course.
So
Marty
why don't you tell us that story as well?
Marty was on the New York Jewish Sports Hall of Fame committee, and I met him up in Long Island, Comac. And Marty was kind of like a character. Marty went to Syracuse. He was a track star, but he was also on the football team. He had a book come out called Fastest Kid on the Block. He went to James Madison High School in Brooklyn. And so he was excited that he was going to be on the Olympic team. The day before he was supposed to run, the United States, Avery Brundage kicked him and Sam Stoller off the team because, and this is what Marty told me firsthand, they felt that Hitler would be upset if Jews won medals. So ironically, the United States replaced Marty Glickman and Sam Stoller with Jesse Owens and Ralph Metcalf. So the bizarre logic is,
And Matt Robinson, Jackie Robinson's brother, was part of that Olympic team,
oh, I didn't know that.
and part of the medalist group. And Jesse Owens is quoted as saying, because I participated in an interview with Marty Glickman, in which the incredible thing was he was still angry at being benched.
Yes.
And Jesse Owens said, let those, and he didn't mean this pejoratively, though it sounds pejoratively to our ears. He said, let those Jew boys run. Jew boy at that point Marty Glickman must have been 18 or 19 at that point. Let those boys run. And essentially, Glickman, to his dying days, and he became famous in New York as a sportscaster for the Jets, and also a broadcaster for basketball. But Marty Glickman, to his dying day, was infuriated at Avery Brundage. And we have to remember, because those of you who know me know that I don't particularly like to smear people's names. But Avery Brundage is the bastard who in 1972 is head now of not the American Olympic Committee, but the Olympic Committee, the World Olympic Committee. He's the bastard who said, let the games go on.
Right after the Palestinian thing.
Resuming the games after the murder of the Palestinian, by the Palestinians, actually in really more in the botched German job, after the murder of the 11 Israeli Olympic athletes. And in fact, those of you who see September 5th, which is the new movie that's out in the theaters about the coverage of it by ABC, will see that while the Israeli athletes were being held captive, the games continued. And it was only with great difficulty that they were suspended for the one day. So let's not be afraid of saying nasty things about Avery Brundage.
Yeah, Marty didn't like him, and there were 11 Jewish athletes murdered by the Palestinians in 1970. That was the same Olympics that Mark Spitz won 7 gold medals, and they were all in world record time. Now, if I'd known we were going to talk about Marty Glickman, I have a bunch of items from him. He even gave me his 2-page resume, typed written. Younger people don't even know what a typewriter is. And he gave it to me and says, Neil, now you know me better than my wife knows me. He was a broadcaster for the New York Knicks, Jets, and Giants. And he even did broadcasting for
That's
like
be Giants football or Giants baseball?
football.
Football.
I don't know how he did it all. He even did like roller derby. He used to like to quiz me on who was Jewish. I still remember the time he said to me, Neil, what do you know about Rudy LaRusso? I said, oh, you think I don't know him? Rudy LaRusso was an Italian fathered Jewish mother. He once scored 50 points for the Lakers when they had like Elgin Baylor and stuff. And Marty signed a New York Jets football for me. And it's a shame what they did to him. But I want to tell you something. The Summer Olympics in Berlin ended August 16th, 1936. A week later, they had races in London, and then August 30th, they had it in Paris. And um, Marty beat the Olympic champions. I know I don't have time to go in my other room, but I have a great photo of Marty winning the 100 meters in Paris, August 30th. Who knows what damage he could have done. Ironically, I had trouble finding information on Sam Stolber. He was, I mean, maybe he was more private. Were you ever in touch with Sam?
No, I was never in touch with Sam. I was only in touch with Marty Glickman.
Right.
And part of that is because when we created the Holocaust Museum, we wanted an interview with Marty Glickman. And the other is, and he gave us an interview which was enormously powerful because he gave it in the same Olympic Stadium where he had been denied the opportunity.
Yeah.
And again, the incredible thing to feel at that point is the anger of a grown man who was enormous athletic success and enormous professional success. And here you have an 18-year-old, 19-year-old young man who is in the body of a 60 or 70-year-old who has all of the anger, all of the disappointment, all of the fury being expressed at Mr. Avery Brundage.
Yeah,
So,
I remember Marty telling me, well, he always went by Marty to me. Other people might call him Martin. But Marty told me that was the first time he ever experienced anti-Semitism.
well,
You
at
know,
James Madison High School in Brooklyn, you didn't experience anti-Semitism.
yeah,
And
that's the school of a lot of politicians. Yeah,
that's,
Chuck Schumer, Bernie Sanders, um, what's it called? The judge. Judge Judy went there.
yeah. No, it's great. And their rival was the home of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the like.
Who
Let
was
me
that?
look at
Rasmus Hall?
what we have with questions, and we'll get the questions up. We have somebody by the name of Judy who says, Agnes Neri was my father's first cousin. She was a very special part of our family. Rena says that Wingate's first name was not David, but Orty.
40?
And that's the name of
Wait a
the.
minute, you're right. There was a basketball player named David Wingate in college. I'm sorry.
So we're getting a couple of corrections. And her, she lived in Israel for about 60 years, Judy said. And Judy also said in proper Hungarian, all surnames are first. And those of you who go on Q&A, you can see the from Judy, and we have to thank Judy very much. You can
Thank you.
see a Zoom link or a YouTube link to her funeral. A fellow by the name of Freddie says, my dad ran track at New Utrecht High School in Brooklyn and was friends with Marty. I love that story. And Freddie said, my dad knew Sam as well. I wish my dad was alive to hear this. We certainly do as well. So that again comes with memory. For anyone who want to know more about Marty Gluckman, Sam Stoller, the Maccabea Games, and how life is best revenge, I recommend the documentary Back to Berlin. I appreciate the informal way this is being presented. It's a beautiful way to honor Agnes and the like. And then Barbara Spryer says that she was at the Olympics Israel Prize in 2017 when she received the Israel Prize. The Israel Prize, for those of you who don't know, is a prize awarded by the state of Israel for essentially monumental contributions to life. It's normally awarded to Israelis, and in 2017, now she was born in 1921, in 2017 she was
96.
96. She did gymnastics then. So this is a woman who kept herself in shape for her entire life, apparently.
She was the oldest living Olympic medalist, obviously, until she passed away in the world. They even mentioned her in the Olympics, this past Olympics, I think in Paris, her name.
They even mentioned her in the Olympics in Paris.
Right.
Well, that again, that's an incredible sense of it. And she could not, you said, interestingly enough, in 56, we have to remember that in 56, the Soviet Union invaded Hungary, and they invaded Hungary in October of 56. And that also became a difficult moment for Jews. And it also became a moment when Hungarian Democrats, and I don't mean political Democrats, I mean people who believed in democracy, when Hungarian Democrats fled Hungary and went over the border to Austria at that point. So it was a tremendous part of turmoil, and that was a moment at which she did not return to Hungary, but kept living abroad. Remember also in October of 56, and the reason I'm recalling it is to give you a sense of it. October 56 was the eve of the American election. It was also the period right after the invasion of the Suez Canal by Britain, France, and then Israel had the war in Sinai. The Melbourne Olympics were in November 1956. About half the team defected. And Aggie's, I don't know, Judy, you said about Aggie's sister in Australia. Very interesting. That's, I didn't realize that the Melbourne Olympics were in November 56. It makes sense.
Right, below the equator.
Yeah, because the other part about November is that it's summer in Australia. July would be a winter in Australia. And consequently, that became, it's the Summer Olympics. We think of the Summer Olympics in American terms and in the Northern Hemisphere terms when it's in July.
Well, right
Tell us, Neil, a little bit about yourself and how you got interested in sports and sports memorabilia, and tell us a little bit about your Holocaust collection. And for those of you who are interested, Neil's Holocaust collection is looking for a place to be displayed and to have an exhibition. And we are unabashedly a fan of making that and helping that to happen. Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your collection.
Well, I have over 22,000 items. If I known we were talking about Marty Glickman, I would have brought his stuff in here. But for the Holocaust, I talk about like Victor Young Perez. He was a world champion, born in Tunisia, captured by the Nazis in Paris, put in Auschwitz in order to fight other Jews to amuse the Nazi guards. Victor never lost a fight, but at the end, they shot him because they said he was stealing money. He was stealing bread and giving it to another prisoner. And we were talking about Hungary. There's a lot of Hungarian Jewish athletes from the Holocaust. There's Alona El-Shakshire. She won the gold medal at the 36 Olympics. In front of Hitler, Jewish women won the gold, silver, and bronze. And I have rare cards of this. Gold was Alona Elkshire, Hungary. Silver was Helene Mayer, Germany. And bronze was Ellen Price, Austria. Although Ellen was actually born in Germany, but in 32 they kicked her off the team. So she decided to represent Austria, which really angered the Nazis. They wanted her books. She wrote a book, and I have a copy of it. Hitler wanted to burn books written by Jews. I'm sure you know all about that. So I have books from her. I have a rare card from Albert Einstein from 1928. But it's a fun hobby. I have over 1,000 items from the Holocaust. I have rare items that I track down the families. Like I was in touch with Victor Perez's family, and I have pictures of Perez at the beach with his parents. I have a picture of Victor in bed, and his mother's giving him a bowl of chicken noodle soup. I really like that because it humanizes these great Jewish athletes the Nazis dehumanized. And I'm doing a national, and I want to go international speaking tour on Jewish athletes, and I'd love to hear from other people if they're interested. And Eric Klein Productions is doing a movie about this right now. We hope to get it on Netflix. Oh, back to Marty Glickman. There was a movie about him called Glickman. I don't know if have you ever heard of that?
Sure. That was the HBO documentary.
Right, exactly. And HBO was the movie they did on Harry Haft, the survivor. And his son Alan Haft came to one of my talks because he worked with Barry Levinson. And that was a great movie. Harry survived. And if you haven't seen the movie, they made him fight other Jews in Auschwitz because he was very muscular. He never lost, and he survived the war. Then he continued boxing, and he actually fought Rocky Marciano. Isn't that amazing?
For those of you who do not know the 1950s, Rocky Marciano was the undefeated heavyweight champion of the world when the heavyweight champion of the world was a major international phenomenon. And he died in a plane crash in 1956, still undefeated. So if you fought Rocky Marciano, we don't have to ask who won that fight.
Yeah, he lost.
He lost.
But he was written up.
But it was no dishonor. It was no dishonor to lose to Rocky Marciano. Everybody did.
Yeah, in fact, Ring Magazine in 1949 wrote an article about Harry Haft. And there's a lot of great Jewish athletes during the Holocaust. There was a fencer, Andrei Kavos from Hungary, won 2 gold medals in the 36 Olympics. And he was murdered. It's called at the Danube River, the Arrow March.
Yes, the Danube. What happened in Hungary? Let me just give you a bit of Holocaust history, ladies and gentlemen. When you speak to historians, sometimes you get history, so you got to be careful. Between the Germans, Hungary, you have to understand, was free until 1944. Jews suffered discrimination, but there was no final solution in Hungary. The Germans invaded, and I always use, Neil, I always use the word Germans because invasion was a formal act of state. The Germans invaded in March 19th, 1944. Jews were rounded up in April and early May, sent to ghettos in local communities. And between the 15th of May and the 8th of July, 437,402 Jews were sent on trains primarily to Birkenau. That was 147 trains, 54 days, primarily to Birkenau, where you have the famous images of the tracks going into Birkenau. And 80%, perhaps 85% were murdered upon arrival. The last then living Jewish community was Budapest. And the other part of, and Budapest was essentially a battle between the Germans the Nazis who wanted to kill the Jews, and something called the Arrow Cross, which was a fascist party that took hold in October of 1944, after they overthrew the existing government that also wanted to murder Jews. And people like Raoul Wallenberg and even the Jews themselves, who were trying to keep alive because they could hear the battle not far away. And the Arrow Cross did something enormously cruel at the Danube, which is they tied the Jews together on ropes, and in order to save ammunition, they shot every other Jew, and consequently, the middle Jew tied to a rope with the other two Jews on either side who were killed would drown. And that's why you have a very moving memorial on the Danube today of the empty shoes on the edge of the Danube where Jews were shot. This was the Arrow Cross action, and very few people could survive the Arrow Cross. They needed a unique part of strength to be able to get out of the rope tie and swim to the other shore. So it's an incredible act of cruelty. And the other part of it is the idea that you shoot every other person so that they're drowning each other. It's a powerful and poignant and painful story. Neil, what final thoughts do you have? Because we're going to sign off in a couple of minutes, and I want to make sure that you had the opportunity to say what you want to say, please.
Well, I collect Jews and everything, but the most painful but most important is the Holocaust. I have trouble myself watching, Holocaust-related movies, but I feel like I have to do this. I retired from being an accountant, and I want to educate people on the dangers of when hate gets out of control. And I think it's the best way I can think of. Like if I show a picture, a trading card of Eddie Hamel, great um, soccer player in Netherlands, little kids can relate to soccer. But then it's more personalized by them hearing about a great Jewish athlete by seeing their trading card. So I'm just trying to educate people.
We also should say something else, Neil, which is we have the image of the Jews in their victimization, and we don't think of the role that athletics played in Jewish society in the 1920s and 1930s, and the youth groups, the very origin of the Maccabean Games, the notion of the ways in which athletics were part of the youth movements in
Yes.
all of the European countries, and Jews fully participated in the athletic culture of their countries, or let's not say it that way. Let's say they as fully participated as they were allowed to participate in the athletic part of in the athletic culture of their country. And you said something at the very beginning, which is that the reason that the Nazis permitted one Jewish athlete to compete in the Olympics on the German team was so they could say we do not discriminate.
Exactly.
And consequently, they could avoid what they feared, which was the boycott of the 1936 Olympics.
I have more memorabilia from the Olympics of Helene Mayer than any other Jewish athletes. And the Nazis did that on purpose. And they let one German Jewish athlete participate in the Winter Olympics, which were also held in Germany. His name was Rudy Ball in hockey. So actually, that was like the movie Hoosiers. Rudy Ball wasn't allowed to be on the team. So Gustav Janicki and some other players on the team, on their national team, bravely went to the German Olympic Committee and said, he plays, we play. He doesn't play, we don't play. And that's how Rudy Ball is the only German Jew in the Winter Olympics.
Well, Neil, thank you very much. We celebrate the life of Agnes, and we also are very grateful to you for this enormously important collection. And
It's
you're
an honor to talk to you because you're like one of my inspirations.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day. Bye-bye.